Everyone's asking about who's going to take over Charlie's mantle. Here's the reality. Nobody will. Let me explain to you why. See, Charlie could speak on politics because he was very well read. He could debate anybody on faith because he was very well read, and he was a believer. He used to tell me, he says, Pat, I study 3 hours a day. He reads 3 hours a day on his own. On top of that, great speaker. He was a great debater. He loved people. He was a family man. He was fearless. He was a hard worker. There's a lot of people that you just put the camera and talk, but they're not willing to go out there and talk to people. This man was 5 men in one body. That's what makes him very unique. He was a builder. How many people are messaging saying, Charlie DM me, told me I did a great job. Charlie messaged me, said he disagrees with me, but he thought my argument was fair. How many people do that? It's very hard to find builders. Very hard to find builders. Everybody has their own individual motivation. And this guy at Turning Point USA, he had people that were pro-Israel, and he would bring Dave Smith to debate, and he would bring, Tucker to come in, and he would bring all these other guys to come in. He had a great relationship with everybody, and that is not easy to do. He was a true synergist. There was a book written many years ago by a man named Lawrence Miller called Barbarians to Bureaucrats. And he says in every organization, in every society, you first have to have the prophet. This is the founding members, founding fathers. Then the barbarians, the industrialists that went out there and were crazy and they were warriors. Then the builders and explorers, Vanderbilts, JP Morgan Chase, Rockefellers, Benjamin Franklin, all of these guys. Then you have the administrators, the lawmakers. Then you have the bureaucrats and aristocrats. And then there comes the fall. But the only way to prevent a fall is a synergist shows up. Charlie was a synergist. Maybe the best one we had. God knows right now, we have a lot of people that have opinions. But what America needs right now is more synergists. But the idea of there being the next Charlie's going to take the mantle, you have to move on. That's like when people said we need another Ronald Reagan and Trump showed up. America's going to be fine. The future looks bright. But we have to finalize this conversation about who's going to replace Charlie. The answer is nobody. He was one of one.
And Seth Meyers at
Yes, The View is in trouble. Car FFC is enforcing accountability, something legacy media has avoided for decades. Taxpayer-funded airwaves should not prop up partisan echo chambers if The View can operate without violating public interest standard. Revoke the license. ABC 16 million settlement over Trump lawsuit proves network prioritized narrative over neutrality. Real free speech means dismantling biased platform that masquerade as public service. Time to audit every dime spent propping up DC media cartels. That is someone responding to this video. Breaking. After successfully taking down Jimmy, Trump FFC chair says FFC will begin looking into The View and Libras are melting down. We have seen The View every single time doing retraction. Things are not okay with them right now.
Jimmy Flynn and Seth Meyers at NBC. Just wondering, do you have comments on those shows? And are they doing what Kimmel did Monday night? And is it even worse on those programs, in your opinion?
Well, look, you can be unfunny. That's fine. And a lot of people are sort of saying that, well, people are punishing Kimmel because they don't like a joke that he told. But, we don't need to rehash it here. But obviously what he said was not a joke. It wasn't presented at all that way. But when you look at these other TV shows, what's interesting is the FCC does have a rule called the equal opportunity rule, which means, for instance, if you're in the run-up to an election, you have one partisan elected official on, you have to give equal time, equal opportunity to the opposing partisan politician. So far, so good. But there's an exception to that rule called the bona fide news exception, which means if you are a bona fide news program, you don't have to abide by the equal opportunity rule. And over the years, the FCC has developed a body of case law on that and has suggested that most of these late night shows, other than SNL, are bona fide news programs. And potentially, I would assume you can make the argument that The View is a bona fide news show. But I'm not so sure about that. And I think it's worthwhile to have the FCC look into whether The View and some of these other programs that you have still qualify as bona fide news programs and therefore exempt from the equal opportunity regime that Congress has put in place.
Got about 30 seconds.
Want more than anything is I want them to stop fooling around with my right to say what I feel.
Well,
I don't like being threatened. I don't like people running up on me. You don't like what I say. This is America. I grew up here. And the one thing I always knew is I had freedom of speech. And every time somebody says, you know, I don't like what they said, so I'm shutting down PBS. I don't like what they do. Those are broad strokes which have nothing to do with reality. Because the fact of the matter is, just because you don't hear me say it doesn't mean I don't feel it. So my big thing is all the things you talked about, but this idea that you can no longer speak your mind as an American is really, really, especially coming from a group that always says, you know what, everyone's shutting us down.
Yes, what these people don't want to acknowledge is the fact that spewing lies on air is unacceptable. You can say what you want, but don't tell lies. Yeah. We have seen this same The View doing retractions over and over because of the lies they spew on air. Even this Charlie that passed away, The View did a retraction about him because they said some ridiculous things. Not only him, there are a lot of people that have put out retractions. Why should you be doing that every single time? If you don't have knowledge on something, you must not comment. You stay silent. That's very simple. You know, when I look at the whole thing, liberals now coming out to talk about issue of free speech, it really touches me in the way that we saw what happened to conservative media. These people targeted everyone. Now, they are now playing the victim card. If you have been sanctioned because of your actions, you should be responsible to own it.
I see you are wearing a hat. What does that hat say?
You're damn right I am, John. I was a guest on the show. He, every night, has a right to come into any house that wants to watch and entertain Americans, just as Greg Gutfeld on Fox has a right to be not funny and go on his network and entertain Americans. It's a part of who we are.
Stop. Neither one of those individuals have the right to work for a network that broadcasts to millions of people each night. No, they don't have a right. That thing about being on ABC is a constitutional right. Networks and affiliates are private entities who choose who they air based on business decisions, contracts, ratings, etc. So these organizations have a right to fire him or suspend him. It's kind of wild a sitting member of Congress doesn't seem to understand this. This is goofy behavior, but he wasn't done. Let's let him continue.
Frankly, it should shake every American that the President of the United States is out there firing comedians who make fun of him. That is not who we are, and every American should care.
Donald Trump, one, doesn't have the power to fire. Donald Trump did not fire Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel's mouth is what got him fired. Insinuating lies about a political assassin.
That is the truth. He fired himself. He should be responsible to own it. People calling out Trump. Trump did this, did that. I didn't see anywhere that Trump instructed people to do this. If they continue to spew these lies again, I want to see the proofs, what Trump did to fire this person. Because they realized what he actually said was not okay. And he refused to apologize for that. Because they don't see that as an issue, right?
Yeah, who are saying, no, don't do it, don't do it.
But you're not going to get anything from
Let me say this. I think to your question, Joy, the Wall Street Journal did report that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, told Trump in May of this year about his name appearing in the documents. Now, that in and of itself is unusual because remember back in the day when there were 3 separate branches of government and we had James Comey, who was very uncomfortable as the effector going into the White House and having meetings with Donald Trump, because that is really something that didn't happen before.
Does anybody else watch The View? Because I think there's some drama, or at the very least, some tea brewing over at that round table. Because I tuned in today. I didn't even just tune in. I was locked in and ready for Joy, Sunny, Anna, and Whoopi to give their perspectives on what happened to Jimmy. And guess what? They said nothing, zero, zip, zilch, nada on the subject of Jimmy Kimmel.
I still have a show, though, right? Okay, good.
I'm going to say one.
Look, there are certain rules of free speech that we must all abide by. But in case anyone needs a refresher, we're going to go over the rules again.
He does not have a right to have a television show where he lies his ass off to the American people.
Well, there are repercussions to spreading lies.
Exactly.
I was very